preference about going first or last? That's Leslie. Hi! Tamika! Hi! He has been so much harder. I know. Hello, how are you? I'm a hugger. Like that, a hug is fine. So nice to see you. I'm a hugger, Leslie. We only go back there. All right, well, I want to hug 50 years. In the 70s, maybe. Yeah, it's 40. It's 40 plus. But it's 40. I don't know. I'm so old. Okay, so people like they're outside and every like here. So who should go first? You want to go last? I think I'll go first. Yeah. Okay. I have a feeling that you have to say that you're going to get started. No, I want to sit on this. Okay, good. So quick getaway. No, because I don't want to be I don't want to do this. I mean, they don't have a basketball field. Everybody's well, they actually wide up. Oh, I don't want to go. Vienna. Over here. Standing by the they stop communicating. We don't have to.
Buenos dias. Welcome, everybody.
Buenos dias.
So glad to see all of you and excited that you could join us for this panel on working for liberation and having a damn good time. I'm Carolina Munoz. I am a professor in the Sociology department, and I'm also the chair of the Brooklyn College chapter of the Professional Staff Congress, which is a union that represents 30,000 staff and faculty at CUNY. I will be the moderator for today. So this is a timely discussion because at the local level, we're in the middle of two important battles. One is that our contract expired on February 28th, and our boss has still not come to the table. The second is the New York State budget, where we're fighting for free tuition, more faculty of color, more mental health counselors, more advisors, through legislation called the New Deal for CUNY. And I hope that you can make it to the CUNY Rising Alliance March for a New Deal for CUNY at noon on Sunday, beginning at Borough Hall and crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. These are, of course, two small fights in a much larger context of threats to our democracy, our bodies, and state violence against people of color. So there's no shortage of organizing that everyone in this room can get involved. Before introducing our wonderful speakers, I want to start off with a land acknowledgement and a reminder to please wear your masks for the entire duration of our session. Brooklyn College sits on the unceded territory stolen from the Canarsie and Nyack subgroups of the indigenous Lenape people in a neighborhood today officially designated as Little Haiti. The original ongoing theft, along with the stolen blood and work of enslaved Africans, facilitates our presence. We pay our respects to all elders, past, present, and future, including the enslaved, migrants, and immigrants who have stewarded this land. We recognize the hundreds of indigenous nations who continue to resist and uphold their culture. We know that this acknowledgement is neither sufficient nor complete, but is part of a process of learning to become more thoughtful and respectful. This process would include a deeper incorporation of indigenous and Native American cultures, philosophies, and peoples into the curriculum, faculty, student body, and staff of Brooklyn College, in line with our mission to provide a transformative, distinctive education to the whole people of New York City. We have 5 fantastic speakers who will speak each for about 5 minutes so that we have time for conversation. I'll briefly introduce them, but you can read more about each of them in the handout. Laurie Bertram Roberts is co-founder of the Mississippi Reproductive Freedom Fund. Adrien Salazar is policy director at the Grassroots Global Justice Alliance. Tamika Middleton is managing director of the Women's March. Leslie Cagan is a longtime social justice and peace organizer and writer. And of course, the extraordinary Barbara Smith, our Hess Scholar in Residence for this year. We are going to start with Barbara.
Where's the mic?
So,
This is what we're doing?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the first time we've done it like this. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not very flexible. So, as things change, like I immediately noticed them. So good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be here at Brooklyn College, which I have fallen in love with during our time together. And that includes when I came in November and when I got the email about a year ago asking if I would consider being nominated for this. And I'm just so happy that I am able to be with you and have been able to be with you this week. This is a panel, several of the panels that have happened this week are one that we have, that I have had input into. And this is one that I definitely wanted to do. And what I will tell you is like why I wanted to do it and also then what I think organizing is. The reason I thought it would be important to do it is because last fall, there were 3 different events in relationship to my being scholar in residence here. And I attended one in person when Jean Theo Harris and I talked about her, the film based upon her wonderful book, The Rebellious Mrs. Rosa Parks. So that's what I did when I was here in November. But I attended one of them, another one online in October, which was around National Coming Out Day and LGBTQIA+ History Month. And I made some comments at the end of it. I was there, as I said, virtually. But I noticed about this very wonderful panel, which was kind of organized around Marlon Riggs' classic film, Black is Black Ain't, which I appeared and was interviewed for that. What I noticed is that all those people talked about what it was like to be a part of the queer community, queer, transgender, binary, gender nonconforming, etc. There was no discussion of why are we where we are right now. There was no discussion of the history and why certain things were true now based upon the history of movements. And I just felt like it was so important to have that kind of narrative. And that's one of the things we'll be talking about today, I'm sure. How did we get here? In 2023, we are under attack because the right wing is ascendant and has been very, very successful in moving its agenda. And at this point, they have people who are trans in their sight lines. And they are making the lives of people who are trans, particularly minors, people who are still in public K-12 schools. They're making the lives of those children absolutely miserable, and hellish. And what we need to ask is, so why is it where it is right now? We'll be talking. about that. And there are many other issues, of course, as has already been mentioned, that we should be concerned about. And then I just want to say what I think organizing is. And this may sound so simple-minded, you'll wonder, like, why in the world is this person even saying this? It's so obvious. But I'm going to say it anyway because I don't think there's necessarily an agreed-upon understanding of what organizing is. First, I'll say what it is not. It is not getting lots of retweets or likes on social media. It is not being able to put someone down who's different from yourself in social media and have the last smart remark. That's what it's not. These are social media, wonderful as it is, and as much as I love it and participate in it myself, mostly on Twitter, I am very clear that it's a means to an end. It's a means of communication. It's not very different from the mimeograph machine that I learned to use back in 1965 when I was volunteering in Cleveland, Ohio, where I grew up, at the Congress of Racial Equality Office, which is CORE. Most people know about the NAACP and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. They don't necessarily know as much about CORE. CORE was to the left of those organizations that I just mentioned. I didn't know it at the time, but it was very, very active in Cleveland. I learned how to use a mimeograph machine. And nobody thought that the mimeograph machine was organizing. They knew it was a means to an end. So there's that. And then what it is people come together who are concerned about critical issues, social, economic, and political problems that are systemic generally, and that can be changed when people come together, strategize with each other, and then move. They're called movements, and that's for a reason. And one of the things about working for social, economic, political, gender, racial justice, whatever kind of justice you're working for, you cannot do it by yourself. It is not possible to make change in a society, in a system, by yourself, no matter how brilliant your ideas. And I think I can stop there, and we'll continue to communicate and talk as time goes on. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Adrien Salazar. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a queer Filipino immigrant, short king, and I am policy director at Grassroots Global Justice Alliance, a national alliance of grassroots community-based organizations. Our time for these opening remarks is short, so I apologize that I prepared some, and I'm going to work off of them, but really look forward to this discussion. I'm so honored to be here, and thank you for the invitation, Barbara. In my work, I get to work with grassroots organizers, community-based groups from all over the country, including the Miami Workers Center in Florida, to Courage Communities United for Restorative Justice in Oakland, to Desi's Rising Up and Moving, and Brooklyn, Uprose Brooklyn here in New York City. I see myself as one warrior among many who together are collectively grappling with the crises of our times that Barbara has laid out, and fighting to build a world where we can all thrive. At GGJ, my organization, Grassroots Global Justice, we have an analysis of these conditions as a trifecta of crises that we're facing: a crisis of empire, a crisis of ecology, and a crisis of our economy. On the ecology, we live in a time of escalating climate crisis. I was just talking to my taxi driver about how it hasn't snowed that much here in New York City, and it's been snowing so much in California and in LA. These are wild times, right? And it's impacting people's lives. The ecological debilitation that we are seeing everywhere, and it's the result of human activity. On the crisis of economy, millions of people in the US and billions of people around the world live under conditions of chronic economic poverty. And on the crisis of empire, we're seeing the increasing state violence at home and abroad, repression of democracy and the rising threat of fascism and violent white supremacy and racial and heteropatriarchal violence on our people. So the place we find ourselves today in is at the interstices of these crises, a Venn diagram, if you will imagine it. And it's not a historical accident that these things overlap. We are here as a result of a decades-long strategy of a corporate takeover of our government, allied with a white supremacist backlash against the advances of the civil rights movement. Trumpism, Ron DeSantis in Florida, the Proud Boys, the movement against critical race theory and the campaigns attacking Black scholars and Black leaders are the products of that takeover, advanced by right-wing think tanks and political strategists over decades. So today, the threats that we see on women's bodily autonomy, on trans and queer people being threatened out of existence, on the demonization of immigrants and the accelerating climate crisis is an outgrowth of that generational strategy. The right is consolidating its power while the state fortifies the apparatus of violence that it has. And you can see this in fights like against Cop City in Atlanta, right, where these crises are inseparable. People are defending the Waylani Forest in Atlanta from the build out of state carceral infrastructure, right? So when I speak of organizing, I speak of engaging with that history. We who are fighting for freedom and a better world, we have to enter this period with a historical perspective. And for me, that means building power. So when I talk about my organizing in the face of these crises, I'm thinking about coalition building. I'm thinking about engaging with elected officials, building our bases. And we have to see every tactic that we employ as part of a historic trajectory. We have our own arc of history that we are bending, right? The specific opportunities that have arisen over the last couple of years, when you see ideas like the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, the uprisings for Black lives, these are also a product of our histories. We are called to thread our work in the here and now with those historic trajectories. And the fight to win the world we need is one that we have to take up with a sense of agency. Like, we are able to shape the direction of history because we have to. We have to direct the flow, and it is our moral duty to do so. So for me, I see myself as a product of my history and see my work as in a trajectory of those traditions. So for example, I recognize that the climate crisis, which affects my people in the Philippines, one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world, is a result of hundreds of years of colonialism in the Philippines. And that for Filipino people and in diaspora, the intersection of colonialism and climate crisis is not an abstract idea, right? Our vulnerability is the result of our economic destabilization over centuries, and the prevalence of U.S. military bases is an outgrowth of the former colonization of the Philippines by the United States. So I just want to fast forward here, and there's going to be time for more discussion, to say, what is it going to take to address these intersecting crises? And for me, I do political advocacy, policy advocacy, and that means I do a little bit of research, analysis, sometimes some electoral organizing, and navigating the institutions of the state. And our social movements are actually quite short on the skills to contend with power at that scale, right? And to reclaim governance, to build institutions, and to govern. And I don't blame us. This isn't an accident. It's the result of histories of repression of left movements in the United States. And so winning the world that we need will take a rigor of developing ourselves, of training, of political education, and a commitment to building power. That includes practical organizing skills, developing our situating ourselves in ideological traditions and practice. And for Grassroots Global Justice, we've taken up this work of training. We have developed a marvelous training or organizing school called the Berta Cáceres International Feminist Organizing. And we see our relationship to historic traditions and programs of training centers like the Highlander Center, the Midwest Academy, et cetera. So we have a lot of opportunity to take up the call of history in this time. And it's going to take rigorous development of ourselves and our movements. And building long-term power is about also pushing ourselves and pushing one another to to take up our agency in the face of the crises that we face, and to own that we are agents of history as well. So thank you, everybody.
Good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yay, I love it. All right. My name is Tamika Middleton. As Carolina shared, I am the managing director at Women's March. I will start off by naming a few things about myself. I am a Black mama born and bred in the South. In particular, I am a Gullah Geechee woman from the Sea Islands of South Carolina. I say that because it shapes very much how I move through the world, how I enter into organizing spaces and into all spaces. And I want to share a little bit less about conditions because I know we got really brilliant folks. Like Adrien just laid all the things out. I want to talk a little bit more about what the understandings that shape who I am as an organizer. So I learned to be an organizer as a teenage college student living in New Orleans in the early 2000s. I went to Xavier. And of course, I've learned lots and lots of things about organizing in those years since, and I'm still learning all the time, but so much of how I work and so much of what I learned at that time still forms the basis of how I move through the work and through the world today. So I wanted to share a few of the things that New Orleans taught me. So first, I was taught to meet the people where they are, wherever that may be. The earliest organizing work I did was organizing around abolition of the prison industrial complex, critical resistance. And so at that time, we went to where people who were most impacted were. So that meant we rode the bus and the streetcar, we went to the car wash and the laundromat, we knocked on doors and the projects, of course, with homies who lived there so we would not get arrested for trespassing. We organized second lines in Black communities. We handed out flyers and voter guides at the club and at the Essence Festival. So very literally meeting the people where they are. But also this means that we have to understand the context and the conditions of the people we're trying to organize. We have to get a sense of what moves and motivates them, what they know and what they want to know, what matters most to them, without judgment. Because this is how we figure out what folks have to offer the movement, and more importantly, what the movement has to offer them. The second thing I learned was to talk to the people like they are your people. So one of the first things I did when I went away to college was learn to bury my accent and to speak in a way that was acceptable to the institution. And that serves me just fine when I'm in an interview or on a panel. But when I organize, I get to return to my drawl. I slip into my natural rhythm. I get comfortable in my skin because for me, organizing is home and the people I organize are my community. So I learned not to approach brothers at the bail bond office talking about the prison industrial complex or to approach Black domestic workers on a train about the gendered and race exploitation of labor.
Okay, all right.
Instead, I talk to them like I would my cousins, brother, or my mama. I show up as myself. I remember to laugh and crack a joke or two, to be easy, and to create a kitchen table wherever I go. That, for me, is how we build trust and how we build community. Third, we bring the people along. In a literal sense, this means helping folks organize carpools, or today helping them with Ubers, bus passes, so you can quite practically bring them to where you want them to be. But this is also figurative. My email signature is a quote from Ella Baker that says, "I have always thought that what is needed is the development of people who are interested not in being leaders as much as in developing the leadership in others. Where we meet folks is not where we leave folks. Otherwise, we have not organized them, and we have not developed their capacity to be leaders in this movement." So if I meet a young person that does not know what feminism is, or that has a warped or inaccurate definition of it, I have not done my work as an organizer. If they walk away down the line, having never heard of a bell hooks or a Barbara Smith, I have done a disservice to them if they don't know how to meet a person in their community and have a conversation with them about feminism, even if the word feminism never leaves their lips, or how to help that person find an entry point to get involved in the movement. And finally, always remember that you are the people, and in order to love the people, you have to love yourself, and vice versa. Stokely Carmichael once said, we must first develop an undying love for our people. We always remember that the work is not about our personal advancement, but very much about our love for ourselves and our folks. Our vision for the world necessarily grows out of the desire we have for a better existence for ourselves and for the ones we love. If I remember not only who I am, but whose I am, and who I am in the work for, I can move beyond my own ego. I can remember to nurture the places that need nurturing, and remember to access the joy and light and healing that bring about transformation for myself, for all of us, and for the world.
All right.
So this is the foundation of my organizing practice. It's a summation of lessons from my elders and my peers that grounds me in the undergrounds, the way I do the work, the way I understand the imperative that I have as an organizer. It carries me in my work at Women's March, on a national scale, and carries me in my local work in Atlanta and my regional work in the South. And really, knocking things over, and really in all the ways that that I do the work and I work to bring about liberation. Thank y'all.
Yeah. Hi. Hi. I'm going to break ranks. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay, good. I don't think it's on, though. I think it's me. But let me put this on. I think for the...
There it goes.
There. Okay, how's it then? Now it's really me. First of all, I want to thank everybody involved in organizing this whole week and this panel, and I really want to thank Barbara and Tamika, Adrien. I actually have nothing else to add. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. So I just want to make a few quick points about organizing, and more specifically, things that we need to think about regardless of the issue we focus on, or the issues that we focus on, or the constituency that we work with. Oh, I see. Hi.
Don't keep talking.
Okay.
My chair is just doing its own thing. It's like possessed since it got here.
Okay.
I'm just trying to light.
Yeah. She's trying to be polite.
Don't try.
Well, welcome. So again, I just want to say a few quick things that I hope organizers are thinking about and focusing on, no matter what arena we're working in. I believe that a great deal of the work of an organizer is finding the balance between what might at times seem like contradictory approaches. For instance, three examples. One, we as organizers always need to be anchored in the multi-layered reality of the moment that we are in. At the same time, we need to be open to new possibilities, new ways to be creative, and not afraid to try new things, to take bold steps that push the limits. Two, we need to also be grounded in our own political analysis. We need to be true to ourselves and the organizations that we are part of. And by the way, when I say political, I do not mean only electoral. I mean the struggle for power in all arenas, not just the electoral arena. So we need to be grounded in our own politics, and at the same time, again, we need to be open to new ways of thinking, new analysis, new perspectives, new ways to take action. And three, the third example, is that while we absolutely need to be focused on what Martin Luther King Jr. called the fierce urgency of now, and now there certainly is a fierce urgency, we at the same time need to be thinking about the long-term struggle.
How do we do our work today, which is often about making needed concrete reforms while also laying the groundwork for making structural change, revolutionary change, if you will. One more kind of big picture thought about organizing. We have to offer many ways for people to participate in the work of social change. There is not one way to do it. There are many ways to do it. That, unfortunately, from my point of view, is often only understood as mobilizing people to turn out to vote or to come to public protest activities, all of which are important, and I do myself in a big way, but that's not enough. We need to bring people directly into decision-making processes within our groups and organizations. People should not only be asked to implement decisions someone else has made, they need to be part of the process of making those decisions. This is complicated, especially as our organizations grow, and I hope they're all growing. So we need to be smart and creative about how we structure those organizations. But if we do not make a serious commitment to democratic processes within our own social movement groupings and organizations, well, what are we doing? That's a question for everyone to ponder. So I will say a quick few words about the moment we're in. This moment, as Adrien said already, has been developing for years and is, as far as I can tell, no end in sight. We are facing the very real threat of fascism. And I don't say that as hyperbole. I have been, among my friends, one of the last people to use that word. But I think we're at that moment. We are not in deep in fascism, but we are on the verge. This country, when I say we, I mean this country. It does not look exactly like German fascism of the 1930s and 40s. It's an American version. Why do I raise that here? It goes back to the first thing I said about how our organizing must be grounded in the realities of the moment. And this is one of the really big and frightening realities of today. I was going to read off a list of what these are, but Adrien touched on most of those things. I would add just a few specific things. The banning of books. Mm-hmm. And I happen to put that at the top of my list, but they all are important. The critical attack, or the attack on critical race theory in particular, and the teaching of Black history generally. The assault on women, as Adrien James, it's not only about abortion, but that's a big one. That's a very big one because it leads to everything else. And a number of other things. I also want to add the attack on science as a serious threat. I'm not a scientist, but I believe in science. I get my vaccines, right? The attack on science, I think, is quite real. And then finally, I would just, again, echoing some of what Adrien said already, that we are living in a time where there is a greater consolidation of wealth in the hands of fewer and fewer people. At the same time, there is overwhelming deregulation of corporations, coupled with a drive to privatize almost everything. It is capitalism on steroids. And running right alongside of that is the ever-expanding militarization in many aspects of our lives. So we have to be concerned about that. Let me say one final thought here about where we find the joy, because so far this hasn't been very joyful. Doesn't sound like
Tamika was about just good joy.
yes. So where I find the joy and the good times is in the people that I work with. It's all about the people. In the course of changing the world, we are also changing ourselves and each other. I certainly hope you. Over the years, I have met the most dynamic, bold, creative, smart, caring, passionate, and compassionate people in the movements of social change. I'm not saying such people don't exist in other arenas, but you're going to find a lot of folks like that in these movements. So we need to embrace that. And embrace not only the people who are coming into the movement, but people who have been doing it for a week, a year, a month, however long, 10 years, 100 years, however long people have been at it. We need to embrace that community as we're building the social change movements. That's it.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to start with. So I'm Laurie Bertram Roberts. I'm sorry I had to take my mask off because I'm hot, and if I go to overheated, I will get nauseous, and we don't want none of that. Y'all don't want none of that. It gets real exorcism-ish, and not in any kind of religious way. So we'll pass on that for today. I'm sure y'all read my bio. Y'all don't need me to read it to you or recite it to y'all. Y'all can catch up on that. I'm the executive director of the Mississippi Reproductive Freedom Fund. I co-founded it with two of my daughters. They are now adults. One of my daughters who also works with the fund is with me today. It's her 23rd birthday. Don't call her Bird. She's my ride or die on the road, my executive assistant, all the things. And so we're going to find some joy on this trip to New York. We're talking about joy. What am I answering? I'm so sorry. I feel like I'm so lost. If we're talking about organizing and working for liberation and having a damn good time doing it, I feel like our org has been striving for that since 2013 when we were founded, because one of my personal goals has been incorporating joy and community care into our work, because our organization is intentionally led, and the leadership is all low income, people of color and queer folks. Most of us are disabled or chronically ill. We can't do this work without that being part of the work that we do. And I just want to say very pointedly that we've gotten a lot of shit for that. I curse a lot, y'all.
Oh,
That's okay.
I'm not that person that I curse a little. No, I curse a lot. And I don't apologize for it either. So we're all college age. If you're not, oh well. Too bad. So I think it's really time for us, if we have not already, to rethink the paradigm of how we do the work. Because a lot of times we do the work and we fuse it with hustle culture, right? We're like, if you're not grinding for the movement, if you're not sleeping on the floor with 5 other people in a hotel room and like sweating and grinding, that's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. That's not how the movement has to look. I understand that we can grind it out like that. I understand that we have grind. Like, it's fine if we have to do it like that. But let's be real honest. The folks who help fund us and the people who can fund us can make it look better than that. And I want to be real clear about that. And I want to be real clear that the other side is not working like that. These folks who harass clinics are not sleeping on the floor 6 to a room at no damn budget in, okay? They got RVs, they got, you know what I'm saying, they doing homestays. And why do I know this? Because I was raised as an evangelical, And I'm telling you, every town they go to, they're getting love offerings, and people are just dumping money in buckets for these people. And our side needs to be not doing the same thing that they do necessarily, but we need to be showing the same love for our people that they show for their people, because we don't. We don't. We will pay $250,000 a year to a white woman who runs an NPO. I won't say no names of no big nonprofits, but if you're a white woman with a certain kind of degree, with a certain kind of pedigree, and maybe your mama was a governor somewhere, then you can get you a six-figure salary and good health insurance, and you can go on every talk show this week and talk about why abortion pills being banned is a bad thing. But I ain't seen no woman of color that's going to be affected in the states like my state. I ain't seen no abortion fund leaders on TV, but I've seen Cecile Richards on TV like 90,000 times. And bless her heart, I appreciate all the work she's done for the movement, but damn it, she's not the only voice in the movement. And she's not on Grassroots. She's not driving nobody to abortion clinics. She has not spent the last 10 years doing what I do. She has not spent the last 12, 20 years doing what the folks in Texas do. She's not on the Grassroots doing none of the stuff that we do. Okay? So I really don't want to hear none of her opinions about what it's going to be like for folks when, mifepristone disappears. Okay? She was never a turn-away patient. I was. She never almost died because she was denied an abortion at a Catholic hospital. I was. I'm not saying they got to book me. I'm saying, but book people like me. There's a bunch of us. We're all in the movement. Center us. So,
that's why you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just saying, we need to be centering and putting folks in positions of leadership who look more like us, right, than those folks. And we need to be funding them. Because to me, that's what having a damn good time looks like. It looks like not having to starve to do work. Yeah. But it also looks like being intentional about what we're doing, right? It looks like having kickbacks, right? And funding them with work, money from the work. And the people who complain the most about us doing that with our money are white women. Just gonna throw that out there. We literally just got accused of publicly by a white woman from another organization of misusing our funds because we don't spend 100% of our money on just abortion, and that because we give our volunteers money for doing work, because they firmly believe that we should all be 100% volunteer with zero overhead. We have to get rid of this toxic ass idea. And beyond that, we have to be incorporating joy just in the movement. Music, food. We have food at every meeting. We have music at every meeting. We have time to chop it up at every meeting. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes we have CBD gummies at every meeting. We have massagers we have for our necks. You got to make time in the movement to have that joy, and also to make those real human connections with folks.
Ooh, sorry. I don't know what that is. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay.
That was so appropriate.
Well done. Yes, I actually triggered emergency something in my phone. You put it here.
So well.
We have about 20 minutes or so for a conversation. So, do we have any questions to start?
Wait, just a minute. 20 minutes?
Yeah, 12:15, right? We go to 12:15?
We can go to 12:30.
Okay, we got more than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
I love this word. It's my
40
favorite
minutes.
I need to say something.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone who has, thank you. I want to thank everybody. I was already awake. And the thing is, I am so woke up. I'm so woke now. So that means that somebody's going to try to slap me down, because they don't like woke. But the thing is that I saw Laurie on a Zoom panel. It was after they leaked the draft Supreme Court decision. This was sponsored by Lux Magazine and Haymarket. And I saw her, and I said, I've watched that thing several times, I was like, who is this, etc. Tamika and I, we only know each other from Zoom because I am a senior advisor for Women's March, and my friends, most of my friends are on the left, to put it mildly, and they really want to know, why is it with Women's March, why are you with Women's March? And I told Tamika told you just now, I said, you see why I'm with Women's March, okay? Women's March has changed, as any good organization does over the years. Leslie and I go back, we're older than dirt, and and we met in the 70s. I said it was 50 years, but she did correct me because it was mid to late 70s, and so it's like less than 50, but almost. So I am just and then we just met because Leslie told me to be in contact with you. But that's not what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is that you may have heard of an organization called the Combahee River Collective. And one of the hidden facts about the Combahee River Collective is that at almost every one of our meetings when we started, Saturday Night Live started, I think, around the same year of Combahee. So one of the components of our meetings on a regular basis was to talk about what had happened on Saturday Night Live the week before. I kid you not. It's actually in writing. Because there's an article that I wrote about Combahee, and I wanted it to be the story of Combahee as opposed to the political analysis or the history of Combahee. I wanted it to be the story of Combahee. And it's in a book co-edited because, sometimes the synapses do not connect. But Ibram Kendi is one of the co-editors of this book, 400 Souls. And it's 400 years of African-American community history. And they asked me to write about the years 75 to 79. Or 74 to 79. And they asked me specifically to write about Combahee. So I wrote about some of the things that we used to do for joy, because people think when you have gray hair, obviously you're not about anything like that. And of course they don't think you were ever young, young and crazy and foolish and what have you. But I just want to say that. Thank you so much, and I'll be quiet from now
on. Not at all.
No, please no.
Any questions?
I really.
You do need it.
Yes, you do.
In this room, yes.
Let's see.
In this room, you need it.
I know I'm not supposed to speak first because I always have to do this. Speak first, but I really want to say this, Laurie, and as well everyone on the panel. I do appreciate the fact that you say that it is not just always grinding. And I think that there is, even in our campus, in terms of organizing, we always turn to folks that could work the most, pay the least, to show the integrity and morality and the importance of the movement. And the reality is that people don't show up because they can show up. They have to pick up another job.
Mm-hmm.
And also, anyone called, I cannot say something there, I don't be sure. And people don't come to meeting, what's long meeting. And not because people don't come to long meeting, because they cannot come to long meetings. Coming to meeting is a privilege. Mm-hmm. You have to have the time and energy and the money and the resources to attend a meeting. And so I just want to really appreciate that. And I really think that we have to rethink on campus the way that we organize our folks, because you have to speak the language they speak and also organize the way that they live. Mm-hmm. And so I really appreciate that.
Can I follow up on that? So one of the things that, so we call MLRFF MRF. So I know. So one of the things that MRF has been really intentional about, and part of that is just because of a lot of us being disabled, is trying to make things accessible to people and meet people where they are. And that's regardless of whether it's protests, whether it's, meetups. I mean, one of the things that we started doing way back, even before we founded MRF, back when I was like a NOW president, is we would have a child care, well, not necessarily a child care area, but a child area at our protests, right? because these weren't, like the antis weren't coming to these protests. These were like a day at the Capitol with signs. And so we would always have like toys and Play-Doh and a shaded area where you could breastfeed. And also like an area further away that was quiet for folks who have, audio issues, right? And a lot of it comes out of the fact that we have folks on our team who are on the autism spectrum. We have folks on our team who have CP, right? We have, from day one, we've had people who need these accommodations, but also we want our elders to be able to show up. We want to be able to have events that are in the evening and in the daytime and in the afternoon. And the other thing, to follow up on what Leslie said earlier, is like, I always say, I don't need people who are movement ready. Like, I don't expect you to already be like completely woke and already ready to do all the things. I just need you to be ready to do the work and learn and to do what you can do. That doesn't mean you have to be able to go to every march. I don't go to every march. No. Like, I've been doing this stuff since I was a teenager. I ain't going to every march anymore. I turned 45 next month. Absolutely not. Like, that other folks can march at every march. I'm sun sensitive. I'm not doing it. However, like, I help plan, you know what I'm saying? I help signal boost. I do other stuff from home that I can do. And I encourage other folks to do the same thing. Maybe your gift is you're a really good graphic artist. Do you know how many orgs need a really good graphic artist to volunteer their time? My org could use really good, anyway. I'm just saying it might be front of my mind for a reason, but I'm saying there are skills that you may have that are outside of what you would traditionally think of. Like, we don't just need you to show up for protests. Protesting is a organizing tactic. It's not the work. Mm-hmm. I need people to like get that out their head. Protesting is not the work. Protesting is a tool in your tool belt of the work. But going to a protest is like a feel-good event that you would, like, I think about it like the pre-event, like it's the hype event. Like, we getting hype, and then now we got to go do the real work. The letter writing, whatever the hell it is, and the organizing to help people get actual needs met. Because we might have did all of that, and we did no actual policy change, but people still need whatever the hell we were fighting for.
To them. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, thanks. I don't know if this is on.
It's on.
Oh, it's on. Oh, I turned it off. Okay, sorry. I just want to say something about the grind, because it's also a grind. I mean, it's like I said, our lives, and not just social change activists that lead lives filled with contradictions. That's the human condition, right? We're all trying to juggle a whole lot of stuff. And one of the things that we have to juggle and balance is the joy, the pleasure, the caring for each other, the paying attention to how each other's doing and what needs we have, and helping to the degree we can meet those needs. There's also, though, that needs to be balanced with the day-to-day grunt work of actually making the phone calls, knocking on the doors, organizing the volunteers to knock on the doors, to set up. Let's not call them meetings. Let's call them gatherings. Let's call them dinner, But the ways people get together. At the heart and soul of organizing is the people.
Yep.
It's got to be about the people. And there is grunt work, or as we sometimes say, shit work to do. And we should be as committed to that and as proud of the work that we're doing in that arena as we are at, all the other elements of what we're trying to do. It's a balancing act, as I see it.
Yeah.
And we have to, can I just say one thing? And we have to stop dumping it all on femmes and women. Thank you.
The one thing I would add to that too is that I talked about it, and Leslie talked about it as well, is that so much of our work is building in points of entry for people, right? And there are so many places for people to enter, but often we have not prepared to absorb folks into our work and to build folks into our work. And so one of the things we talk about at Women's March is we think of ourselves as an on-ramp for everyday women into the movement. We say there is no lower barrier of entry into the movement than making a sign and showing up at a march. And then our work is to usher those folks into more work, into deeper commitment in the movement, and to train them up to be able to take on that kind of leadership, right? And so that is a big part of the work. But I also think about how what you were just saying about the grind work, the behind the scenes work, that for some of our folks, if we are doing, the organizer 101, they're like, you meet a person and then you have a one-to-one with them, right? If we are doing those like individual conversations where we build community, we will learn that for some people, that is their offering. For some people, when I used to organize Black domestic workers in Georgia, and for some folks, when we have food at the meeting, some people are like, yo, I burn. Like, you need food for the meetings, I got you. That's my contribution. I'm going to show up with the food for the meetings. Some folks are like, once upon a time, my contribution was, I'm going to build a political space for the children. Because when we have children's spaces, they can be toys and coloring books, but they can also be spaces where the children can be politically developed as well, right? And so that is a contribution to the space. That is work that somebody got to do, and somebody will want to do. Somebody will love it. For somebody, that will be the joy for them. When I was a young organizer, I'm like, give me all the data to enter into the database.
I have one of those.
So that for me was like, oh, I can sit. I'm a little bit, you can't always tell, but I am a bit introverted. And so I'm like, oh, I don't have to talk to people. I can just be at the computer, plugging in, and that is a thing that, for somebody, it will be the thing that brings them joy. It will be the thing that makes them feel like they have made a solid contribution. When the protests following Mike Brown were popping off, I was early in my own journey with my chronic illness. And I had these are my littles over here, and this these are my children. And my little was very little at that point, and so I could not turn up at all. I could not turn up at all of the protests. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna be swollen the next day. This is not gonna be the move for my life. And so I am not gonna be the one who is going to show up at the thing in March and then die in and get arrested. That's not the judge. I got my kids with me. But what I can do is be a thought partner. What I can do is go to the altar. What I can do is think about the healing space and the healing resources for our folks when they're coming out. So our work is to build all the entry points for our whatever that entry point may be. And sometimes that entry point is the grunt work. Sometimes that is something that they might not be able to show up to the meeting, but maybe they can make 50 phone calls. You know what I'm saying? So our work is to find the place where our people can get in where they fit in.
Right. And maybe they can fundraise.
Listen.
Adrien, did you want to?
As I said on the podcast, use your superpower, white ladies.
I just want to say, I really appreciate Adrien's repricing theological material. And I think part of what helps that persist, the backlash from the civil rights movement, is that the enemy has gotten very savvy at using black faces or brown faces in high places. And we have not responded well to that. In fact, I'm a child of an environment where I was taught to celebrate Clarence Thomas, Colin Powell, Condoleezza Rice. I was disowned for 8 years during Obama. We suffer from it with Eric Adams now. And you see it in places like Brooklyn College. They kill our politics, they kill our joy. I'm more so interested in what Barbara or Leslie has to say, because you all have been around longer and you saw it develop. How do we respond to this in a way where even our own people might attack us if we recognize somebody who has bad politics, but they look like us?
Right.
I think, even though I can respond to that, I think it's time for other people to jump in here.
Right.
That was our intention. So we'll talk one-on-one, and I'm really glad that you do acknowledge, like when you said the civil rights movement, I said, and I was actually in the civil rights movement as a teenager in the mid-1960s. And I assume you were involved in some way too. It's interesting when you're sitting in a room with people so many different ages and backgrounds, and for some people it's history, and for some people it's their biography.
Right.
But I think we should keep it going out there with you, with you.
Yeah. Questions?
Other questions
Our comments,
or comments?
remarks.
Salutations. Snap.
Thank you so much for this. I'm faculty here, so I hope this is sort of an invitation for some of my students are here who are amazing. Picking up what Laurie said and bringing back to Brooklyn College, right? What they've done is sort of weaponized care. So we're told, here's the solution to the budget crisis. Just be more caring. Money, care doesn't cost anything, right? They don't see the time, the toll it takes, any of that, right? We're talking about retaining students and recruiting students. And that somehow will just happen if we care. Students don't need actual resources. They just need people to tell them that they care. So one of the things is that, we're struggling here to figure out how to take that idea of care back. Because when they say, they being CUNY administration, Brooklyn College administration, our colleagues, that we need to care more. It's really hard to say no, right? Because then you're a bad person. But as Salpon said, who does amazing work here, that it is the people who are paid the least, right, who are expected to do the most. I will say this because I see this everywhere, is that the Vice Chancellor of CUNY got a $90,000 raise. 90,000. He made somewhere in the $300,000 range per year. Add 90,000 to that.
That's more than my
Authorized by the Board of Trustees in December of last year, retroactive for the entire 2022. In the meantime, that $90,000 would make such a difference. It won't fix everything, but it would make such a difference. It will make Salpon's life just that little bit easier. Right? And then they talk about who actually cares. Nobody in CUNY executive has taken a pay cut this last 2 years. Dozens of adjuncts have lost their jobs. Right? So I'm wondering, for our students, when this care idea, just how's it playing out?
May I just give a smart retort if somebody said that to me in my presence, and they would say, well, caring doesn't cost anything. I said, well, you know what does cost something? Rent. So if you can tell me how caring is going to deal with rent, we don't really have anything to talk about. That's what I would say. And see, that's why I've never been institutionalized. I have never been institutionalized because I did not see college and university spaces as a place where I could really get work done. And one of my first my first teaching job at Emerson College back in 1972, when I started, I realized that there was an issue of Emerson College was based at that time in Back Bay on Beacon Street, which is one of the most prestigious, richest streets in the city and in the country. And the African American student group had a beautiful townhouse. I mean, beautiful, with friezes and stuff painted on walls and everything. Just like a beautiful, probably Victorian townhouse. And the college wanted to take it away from them. And so, of course, the students came to me, and I was just a few years older than they were. I was in my 20s. mid-20s. And the thing is that they came to me and we talked and we strategized. And that was when it dawned on me. There will be one day when something like this is going on if I pursue an academic career, when I will have to make a choice and it will be the students. It will not be the other people. And the thing is that for those of you who have hung in, because we need education, we need leaders, intellectual leaders, people who do hang in. And that's one of the reasons I have fallen in love with Brooklyn College, because although I haven't met that many of you, I see people who have hung in and who are doing everything possible to help students who were not born with silver spoons in their mouths. This school is so different from most of the schools I go to, because I go to those silver spoon schools because they have money, you know. And the thing is, that's how I used to make, something called a living, which, go and get, and not any high dollar stuff. I'll go someplace and did in those days for $500. So the thing is, and there are people that who you admire, they won't get on the plane for less than $4,000. But anyway, back to you. But
hold on. I know. But I want to give what I want to to the students, because that's why we're here, right? So in movements, we have this thing we say, right? Step up if you haven't. Step back if you have. So anybody want to step up? Any students want to ask a question about organizing?
Hi, everybody. That's also my first there. I was sorry.
we can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
I was thinking about the idea of care and how we appreciate care within our movements, and how we allow to stop taking care, because often care is not accessible to everyone, right? And I'm thinking, how do we start revolutionizing the way we care in movements, that it is accessible to everybody? That it's not only privileged you that gets care, that gets to understand what care looks like in their everyday lives, right? A lot of the reasons we don't get folks in movements because they feel like it's such tremendous work, and it's not obtainable for the way they live and the way they go about living. So I was just thinking about how do we shift that narrative with ourselves in our movement, because it's kind of demoralizing to people to even start initiating conversations like, can I even join this movement? Because how am I going to be able to have access to it,
May I?
Students before we...
Yeah.
Okay. I'll let the panelists speak a little bit more.
I'll let Liz go.
If I can. Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to, trust me, I am not going to step up.
But, I mean, I don't have to go first. No. Well, let me just then jump in here. As you were speaking, as you were raising a question, I remembered something that's happened several times. I have been involved in organizing many street protests, many demonstrations, and I'm often in front of the front line trying to pace it, trying to tell people to walk faster, walk slower, we're making a turn, all that kind of stuff. And often what happens, there are people at the front line who are very energetic and, ready to run down the street. And there are people way behind who fall behind, and the gaps get bigger and bigger. So one day it came upon me to say to the people in front, and as we were stopped for a red light or something, I don't know what, I said, imagine that you are 80 years old and you have arthritis in both legs, right? And you can't run down the street, right? Walk like that so that the people behind you can walk at their pace, so what they need to do. It takes a leap of faith to imagine other people's reality. And sometimes you don't have to imagine it. More often than not, what makes more sense is to actually ask people, what would make this work for you? Is this a time that a meeting, that you could come to a meeting, right? Is it accessible to you? Not only in terms of physically accessible, but is it literally, can you get yourself to the meeting? Is it near public transportation, et cetera, whatever. So I think, again, since the job of organizing is all about the interaction with people, sort of the first layer of that, as we're trying to bring in new people, is to actually ask them, what would make it easier, more comfortable, where you would feel it's a healthier environment, where you're getting what you need to actually make a real contribution. And it takes a little time. And I know the pressures of what we're up against sometimes make us feel like we don't have time, right? There's so much work to do, we don't have time. But taking those minutes, those moments, to have that kind of interaction pays off in the long run.
Can I also just add 2 words, mutual aid? I just think there's a really big space for including mutual aid in movement work. I know it's very central to the work I do. Like, before I even knew the word mutual aid, we were already doing mutual aid. And like, we have to divorce ourselves from the charity model, which is white supremacist, it is classist, it is basically saying, I'm here to save you. And as long as we're working from that model, we'll never have care within our movement, because we're there to save people and care for them and not care for ourselves, because of course we already have it together. We don't need no damn care, we're here to save you. So why would we be caring for ourselves? Because we're the ones, right? So as long as we're looking at ourselves as the ones who got it together and are here to tell the little people how they should behave and give them things, then of course we're not here to care for ourselves as well. Even though we could be more hungry than the people we're serving, need more health care than the people we're serving, need an abortion just like the people we're serving. Literally, while I first started funding abortions, before I started funding abortions, but the first abortion I funded was my daughter's. When I was a clinic escort, I had to crowdsource my own daughter's abortion. Okay? And I just want to say, the clinic owner did not really help me. Okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, the people I expected to help me didn't help me. And that was insightful to my work. But I'm also saying it let me know who the people were that I could count on, which is us. We got us, right? And that's what I think of. When I think of care, I think of we can't put it on our own masks before we get out, like we're on a plane, right? Put on your own oxygen before you go out to put on somebody else's. And until we start thinking about that in the context of mutual aid, like when we're growing a garden is for us too, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, I just wanted to say 2 things. First, about care. We cannot let our opponents grab hold of our most powerful ideas and use them as weapons against us. I think, the organizing that the faculty was, the professor was speaking about is happening here, and then talking about, well, just, have some care to deal with this budget crisis. The idea of building a caring economy, embedding care into our movements, this is our idea. This comes from feminist movements. This comes from the civil rights movement, right? When you're talking about having childcare, when we talk about like having a different kind of culture than the hustle culture that leads to burnout and organizing, we're talking about care. When we're talking about investing in our aunties and our comrades who are nurses, who are home care workers, organizing them. Some of our members organize with care workers and domestic workers. We're talking about building the caring economy, right? And so there is an antidote to that hustle culture
that is about weaving in at every level. And I think how you said it, Leslie, is like, how are we actually building a culture that tends to the people who have the greatest need, not just in our society, but in our movements, in this work? How are we building that world in our practice? And how are we making space for rest? How are we allowing spaciousness in our work and in our organizing? And that to me is how we have to reclaim care, and we have to continue to fight for the caring economy that we need. And we can't surrender that notion to our opponents and in the ways that they're sort of attacking all of our best ideas, like critical race theory and the Green New Deal, et cetera, right? And I just wanted to touch briefly on this comment this gentleman made earlier about people of color becoming in positions and actually becoming our opponents. One thing that is happening right now in this country is the demographics are shifting, right? And very soon, people of color are going to be the majority of this country. And the right knows that. And this is why you have this intense backlash against the increasing engagement of folks in democracy. And the thing that's important is that demographics is not destiny. And the right is building strategies to recruit our folks. You know, for me as a Filipino, it's very disappointing to know that among all Asian Americans, Filipino Americans were the highest proportion of Asians to vote for Trump in the 2016 election, in the 2020 election, right? And you see that they're trying to build coalitions of people of color and trying to recruit them through their like evangelical Christianity and their beliefs and integrating all of these. And we have to come to meet our folks where they're at, right? Sometimes these complex ideas, like talking about heteropatriarchy, talking about fascism, like people are get together, like, what are you talking about? And we have to be able to break it down, yes, and then talk to our folks and build strategies to make sure that we are giving them the weapons and the ideas that resist what the right is feeding them, because the right is feeding them xenophobia, it's feeding them, you know, actually like self-hatred and all of these ideologies of violence that then become like an illusion when we have to talk to them about the care that we're building into our movements, how we're trying to fight for a better life, good jobs, and a healthy future for everyone.
And can I just say one last thing? I swear I'll shut up. But let me just say that the right is doing something we're not. So like we talk about being intersectional and we talk about how all these things are not silos and how all these things intersect, but the right is moving collectively. Mm-hmm. The same people that show up to protest CRT show up to protest trans people. The same folks who was protesting in our clinics were at January 6th. The same people who protest, you know what I'm saying? The same people who are the homophobes that were protesting gay marriage are the same ones who were out here for the anti-abortion stuff. These folks are all on the same note, on the same chord, singing the same verse every time. And we don't do that. We have to beg folks from like the LGBTQ groups to show up for abortion stuff. Mm-hmm. Like it took abortion becoming illegal in our state for some orgs to even acknowledge our existence past asking us for money secretly. I'm not joking. And I'm just like, when will we realize that they're moving on one accord? They're using the same tactics against CRT that they worked on for abortion. They're using the same tactics against trans folks. It's the same playbook that they're using for everything. Just like when you were talking about the language that they're using about care, it's the same playbook of taking our language, weaponizing it against us, and then it's like I call it the 1984ing of like our lives, right? Like that I just wrote a thread about this on Twitter about how Jessa Darger got to have her abortion and then don't call it an abortion because the right has made people believe that if you need an abortion during a miscarriage, it's not really an abortion. And I had a life-saving abortion, and for years I didn't think I had an abortion. Why? Because Catholics will tell you it's not an abortion. If you're in a Catholic hospital, they'll tell you, nope, that was just a DNC. Have a nice day. But you had an abortion. And it's all bullshit. It's all just language voodoo. Like, it's all language magic. I don't want to use voodoo in a bad way because it's sacred. But it's all language magic, right? It's all language. It's just moving. It's a shell game.
Tamika, did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to say just really quickly to the care question. I wanted to offer to the care and movements question to offer a frame shift because we talk a lot about self-care, and I would like to move us towards a framing around healing justice and what folks in other parts of the world call collective care. And to that point, I would make a book recommendation, and not just because I'm in the book, Healing Justice Lineages, edited by Kara Page and Erica Woodland. It just dropped. It's phenomenal. And in particular, it has examples of how folks have integrated collective care, healing justice, etc., in movements across many decades and in different parts of the country. So I would highly recommend to check the book out. Healing Justice Lineages. Healing Justice Lineages.
Okay.
And Kara is at Barnard. So if y'all are around, she's around in the city. I do want to say really quick to this question about Black leadership because I live in Atlanta and have lived in Atlanta since 2006, the end of the Shirley Franklin administration. I do want to name. I think that Atlanta is a very particular case study in this thing you're talking about around Black leadership being weaponized against Black communities, because it was under the leadership of a Black mayor, of Black mayors, that Atlanta became the city with the highest income inequality in the country, that Atlanta became now a city that is no longer majority Black. Atlanta became the home of Cop City. Under a so-called progressive mayor. I don't know if you all saw the way that those young people in the Atlanta University Center pressed our current mayor to where he was shouting, "I am not a sellout," in the midst of the forum with the young people. But in particular, a mayor who early in his career was a so-called progressive, right? A mayor who sponsored legislation to close the city jail, and then during his mayoral run, when he was still on city council, opposed the closing of the city jail, who became mayor and is pausing and is halting and intervening against the efforts to close the city jail, and who has now, been very instrumental in holding information, in oppressing, mass repression of protesters in the city, and utilizing the same way in which the right will take language, right? The language is a funny thing. It is now utilizing the language of white supremacists to say that outside agitators are the cause of the protest, the people who are instigating the protest in Atlanta. So I think if you want to know what it looks like for Black faces in high places to portray Black people, I think Atlanta is a very interesting case study. I think Atlantans get very caught up when the mayor before the last one was a mayor named Kasim Reed, and people thought it referred to him as like a hip hop mayor. He would be at parties with Jeezy. It's a whole thing, right? And this is a mayor who, when young Black organizers wanted to meet with him about police violence, when they showed up to the meeting, y'all want to know who met them there? Who was the first face they saw? Usher. Now, why would Usher be in that meeting, y'all?
I remember that.
This is the way in which, and then with our last mayor, Keisha Lance Bottom, everybody's like, I got a mayor named Keisha.
When are you running?
Listen, they don't want me.
They not ready.
Listen, our last mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, when our Atlanta mayors are very good for creating task force. They're like, we're gonna make a task force. Oh, y'all got a problem? We're gonna make a task force about it, and put the same people on it. But you know who always somehow ends up on a task force for some interesting reason? T.I. Killer Mike. He got Peter Jackson. It's inexplicable, right? But the way in which Black faces are used to portray Black people. So I just wanted to say that because Atlanta is a peculiar place, and so the resistance is strong. Right. And despite how they want to paint it on the outside, Black folks stay in the resistance and stay inside of that, and not just Black folks, but Black Atlantans in particular. So I want to make that.
So one of the problems with people who are like lifetime activists and organizers is that they're really, 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 really smart because they see the mess and they decide to do something about it. So our problems, I think, are our dynamic of us rattling on and not having as much dialogue. This should have been 3 hours long. But you have other stuff to do. And what I want to say, I have 2 footnotes. Eric Anderson. So, Atlanta, New York City, it's the same crap. 2 footnote books to tell you about it. About that thing of black faces and other people of color type faces and women's faces in high places. The book is Elite Capture, How the Powerful Took Over Identity Politics and Everything Else by Olufemi Otayo, published by Haymarket Books. I'm sure some of you know about it. Elite Capture. And the other one is Dean Spade, Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next. Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next by Dean Spade. So just 2 books.
I already have that.
All right, we are out of time. I just want to remind everybody that the lecture, the Barbara Smith lecture, is today at 5 p.m.